Oh, great. It just says you're live. Well, I'm live here on YouTube and I shared on Facebook, but I'm gonna try and see what it looks like on Facebook. Switch over to my Facebook stream and try to understand just where we are in public education today. And where we are is that we're not. We are not. We're just not providing the level of support and oversight for the community in regards to public schools and public services. And so when I think about what's really happening and what's happened over time, it's just so concerning. It's concerning simply because truly we we're not there. No matter what you say, we're not where we should be when it comes to ensuring that all children have access or Black children have access, because that's just not happening. If you have a parent who understands the importance of public education and they're there and they're checking on your homework or checking on your report cards or checking in with your teachers to ensure that you are actually benefiting from the mandated compensatory services that are mandated by every state in America. Think about that. All of the states mandate public education. It's mandated by law. And so we are to ensure that access happens from the foundations of every state. That's kind of how we got our freedom. All states had to ensure that we would have access and we would be free as a people. Now, here we are, some 150 years out of slavery, out of the Emancipation Proclamation, and we're freed people, but we are only free to fail. Failure has been the only option for our people forever. There are some people that are very, very successful, and then there are other people who are just dependent on the system. And when I say system dependent, meaning that they just assume that somehow the system is going to provide access to them. But it doesn't work that way. The system sustains itself. And so, because we were never really involved in ensuring the public education system be public, although we were a great part of the fundamental foundation of public education, because the funding to all of the states came from the federal government to access in regards to how access is provided for children with disabilities and children who would be entitled to that additional level of support, and perhaps the state couldn't afford to do the level of support that should be accessible for the families. And so then the federal government jumps in and says, hey, I'm going to plug this speaker in to make sure that I'm adequately coming through. But the federal government says, I will help sustain your people, your population, and help you ensure that people in poverty have access, and African Americans, we can help support African Americans. But there's legislation that's written at the federal level also that talks about access, Title I and special education and gifted and talented and neglected and delinquent. And you can just go through all the pots of money that are provided to states to ensure access, and then ask yourself, how is it that African American children are not accessing public schools? How does that happen? I mean, how is it that we accept the letter grade of F for so many children? And that's something that we just accept. It's just something that happens. And so when I look at how I have not been able to be successful in supporting the families that I do provide support for in the last 2 or 3 years, it's like we go to the IEP and we talk about, where the students are. And actually the students are below grade level. So we're talking about high school students who are 2 to 3 grade levels below where they should be. And they're not where they should be. Okay, so what can we say about that? we can say that they are failing to make adequate yearly progress. But guess what? A 12th grader or a 9th grader or an 8th grader cannot do the level of work that it would require to engage in an executive functioning level for their age group if they've not moved beyond 5th grade level. So many of the children wind up in high school not even reading at 6th grade level. Well, what does the community say about that? Well, in Sacramento, we got the Black Parallel School Board that came to fruition, and they attempted to work with the district in regards to the willful defiance issues, but those issues just continue to increase. And so now I believe that there's a lawsuit hanging over the public school system in Sacramento, but understand Sacramento is the capital of California. And so as whatever's going on in the capital happens, for the most part, wherever there's, issues. But California, Sacramento gets away with far more than Los Angeles and far more than Oakland Unified did. And Sacramento is just like, I had the opportunity to participate at a level to sign the CONAP for the district. That's a consolidated funding application for the district. And so therefore, the funding formulas and how they allocated the money at the school sites and how the parents would be involved, I understood that. And I also understood that they could create programs like magnet programs, not to really integrate more minority students, but to give opportunities to more affluent students, because we were talking about the ability to engage in the process in which, just how to better yourself, how one would better yourself. And so, it's just something that I can say that it just doesn't happen. And that it hasn't happened, ever. Over the last 30-something years, I can say that as long as my children have been in public education, because I'm now 60 or over 60, and I can say that understanding what happened over the last 30 years was devastating to the Black community, because Black people are not working in their local communities. They are not in charge of measuring the benefit of the public services, although we do pay taxes. And for Black entertainers who pay lots of taxes, and people who gamble, and people pay tax money, and the tax money comes back to your local community to ensure access. But it's unfortunate that you can have a student in the 12th grade who receives letter grades of Fs and gets no credits all the way until the 12th grade, and then they become something like a super senior. What does that mean? I don't know what it means. It's not a reward. I don't know what we should think about that when we're looking at over a 50% failure rate of public schools when it comes to African American children. It's distressing. And that's why I said that I needed to talk about the serious urgency of right now. Because even if we have children who are graduating with the ability to move on to a four-year university, and they come back, there's no jobs for them in the Black community. Because Blacks are not allowed to participate or engage in the process of the benefit for what happens to their people. How could we be involved in the level of oversight and accountability when failure is just allowed to happen? Why is a child mandated to attend public school by law, and the families can be incarcerated if they don't get their children to school? And why do we have child abuse rules and regulations when basically the system can set you up to where you can't even access minimal services in America? Why is it that we allow people to just live on the street without any cover or any resources, no places to use the bathroom? And then we have people who actively engage in, they don't want that in their neighborhood. So they don't want them coming over camping in their neighborhood. So we just move poverty. I'm so frustrated and so confused and so pissed off to understand that failure is just an option, and that you could be mandated to go to school and receive a letter grade of F and get no credits and then be promoted to the next grade level. So that's called social promotion. And understand that when I said that I was involved in an organization, the Justice Reform Coalition, and where we were attempting to advocate for African Americans or Black Americans who were in the public school system in Sac City Unified School District, where Sacramento City Unified School District had an astronomical number of children, African American males, being put in special education. And we could do nothing about it because they didn't have to have a conversation with us. How is it that in the year 2020, when you raise a concern in regards to federal guidance or state guidance for the failure of public services to African American children, they can just ignore you like you didn't say a word? And they can just say that you need to get an attorney. You need to go get a lawyer. Why do you have to have a lawyer to benefit from the federal mandated services that all children are remediated to the state if the parents don't provide it? It's more than confusing. I'm trying to understand what the law really means. How does the law enable one to be coming through a system of education for 12 years and still be an idiot? And how do we have socially promoted jobs that have to do with federal outcomes or mandated services, and you can't measure the benefit of the job that they do? So what is social welfare? Is social welfare really social welfare over federal and state programs where there are no outcomes? Or is social welfare mandated oversight programs that measure no benefit to the people because the people keep coming back with the same free handout? I don't know, but I do know one thing, that everything you ever really wanted to know about is on the internet, and the tools necessary is available to all, although a lot of people might not know that simply because I want to say network management is real. Network administrators are real. They can alter, they can change, and they can eliminate, and they can remove items off the net. But as far as the failure of public education here in Clark County, because that's where I live right now, and I'm really trying to understand what they're doing here and how they fund their schools, because it seems like they get to fund their schools however they want because they don't have any engagement from the public, period. And they have social groups and commissions and boards and a lot of community people that are involved in the federal mandates of the outcomes, but the outcomes are not happening for Black people. Somehow Black people are just on the bottom of the barrel here. And it's okay that it's something that's just been totally accepted, because there is no federal oversight or federal intervention into states' rights here. We live in a state that says it's a state right to not ensure that all children have access. And that, you don't have to ensure that children are enrolled in the public education system before 7. And so at 7 years old, when they come, they're not prepared to learn. Then you start documenting them and say they have all these behavior issues. And then they can get to a 259% rate of suspension and expulsion, higher than any other subgroup in America, as far as I'm concerned. And then have no one talk to you about it on a real level of engagement. Can't tell you why it happens. Just tell you that's what it is, and feel that they have no obligation to change anything. And so that's why I said I'd go live. And I don't know how this live stream works, but apparently, I don't have any followers or hardly any followers on YouTube, but that's why I chose to do it. I have a program called Zoom. I want to do some coursework around parent involvement and parent engagement and what we should really be expecting on, through our involvement in public services, because we're only engaging ourselves in the services that are offered through the taxes that we pay all of our lives. We have to have a voice. We have a right to have a voice. We have a right to ensure that we can measure the benefit of the public services provided in our community for people who look like us. That's what I'll say. And so it's important. I've been on here for like 15 minutes. I'm going to go off and I'm going to come back later, see if I can promote some more people to get in here with me. And perhaps I'll try and do the Zoom program because I think that one's pretty good. And maybe I can invite more people in the room to have a conversation because I know a lot of people and I've worked with a lot of people over time. But we really have to do better in regards to being an American citizen. We really have to exercise our right to have our voices heard and our concerns met, and to ensure that we have access to ensure that we can hold local people accountable for the local outcomes of failure for the Black community, especially here in Las Vegas, the entertainment capital of the world. Thank you, and I'll check you later.